Let me tell you about the moment a partnership that lasted 47 years quietly came to an end. Not because of conflict, not because of scandal, and not because of some dramatic fallout. Instead, it ended with the emergence of a single name, Eala. A 20-year-old tennis player from Quezon City in the Philippines, currently ranked around the top 30 in the world, who has suddenly become the central commercial focus of one of the most historically loyal sponsors women's tennis has ever known. Every dollar, every ounce of prestige, every marketing resource that Porsche once distributed across the entire sport has now been redirected toward one individual. WTA executives are not pleased. In fact, many of them are furious. And the reason behind that anger goes much deeper than a simple sponsorship announcement. The real story beneath this headline is far bigger and far more complicated than most people realize. To understand it properly, we need to go all the way back to 1978. That year, a 15-year-old tennis prodigy named Tracy Austin arrived in Filderstadt, Germany. She looked young, almost fragile, wearing braces and pigtails. Yet she carried a quiet intensity that made everyone in the room pause and watch. Porsche representatives were there that day. Something clicked instantly. What began as a small connection between a young athlete and an automotive brand evolved into one of the longest and most loyal relationships in sports sponsorship history. 47 uninterrupted years. That kind of timeline is not merely a business arrangement. It resembles a marriage. Over the decades, Porsche remained present through every era of women's tennis. They were there during Martina Hingis's brilliance. They witnessed the dominance of great champions, the dramatic presence of Maria Sharapova, the determination of Angelique Kerber, and the power of Iga Swiatek collecting Grand Slam titles. Through controversies, commercial storms, and generational transitions, Porsche never walked away. Their commitment remained steady. The Porsche Tennis Grand Prix in Stuttgart became one of the most prestigious indoor tournaments in Europe and eventually the oldest professional women's indoor event on the continent. In 2006, the tournament moved into the Porsche Arena, a venue literally carrying the company's name on the building itself. Over the years, players repeatedly voted it as their favorite tournament in its category. Between 2007 and 2019, it received that recognition 10 different times. In 2025 alone, more than 33,000 fans filled the arena during the tournament week, the largest attendance since the pandemic era. Porsche also launched programs like the Porsche Talent Team to support young players. They donated €100 for every ace served during the event to children's charities in Stuttgart. They signed athletes such as Emma Raducanu and Angelique Kerber as brand ambassadors. What they built around women's tennis felt authentic, organic, and deeply integrated into the sports culture. When Aryna Sabalenka once sat at a press conference in Stuttgart and said she wanted to finally win the Porsche trophy that year, the comment felt personal. It sounded less like a sponsor promotion and more like a genuine ambition tied to the tradition of the event itself. That is what nearly half a century of loyalty looks like. And then December of 2025 arrived. Mercedes-Benz entered the picture. What they revealed shocked the entire tennis industry. Their announcement was not simply another sponsorship agreement. It was the largest single financial commitment ever recorded in the history of women's professional sport. Beginning January 1, 2026, the WTA Tour officially became known as the WTA Tour driven by Mercedes-Benz. The deal included title partnership status, worldwide branding rights, net post signage at tournaments around the globe, and an unprecedented level of exclusivity. Suddenly, Porsche, the brand that had spent decades helping shape the commercial identity of women's tennis, found itself pushed into a corner. Technically speaking, they were still protected in certain areas. Events that already had automotive partnerships were allowed to keep them. The Stuttgart tournament belonged to Porsche. They organized it, funded it, and hosted it inside their own arena. Mercedes could not interfere with that. But the broader identity of women's tennis sponsorship had changed. For years, Porsche proudly described itself as the most loyal sponsor in the sport. That narrative lived on their own website and across marketing materials. Now the entire tour was aligned with the three-pointed star of Mercedes-Benz. According to several sources familiar with internal negotiations, the Mercedes contract also contained provisions that could eventually allow them to buy out secondary automotive partnerships at smaller WTA events, particularly those at the 250 and 500 levels. The timeline for those potential changes remained intentionally unclear, but the tension inside the sport was unmistakable. Porsche responded with a decision that surprised nearly everyone. Instead of retreating quietly or attempting to defend their old territory, they executed a strategic pivot with remarkable speed. It was the type of move that separates brands that simply participate in sports marketing from those that redefine it. And the direction of that pivot led to a young athlete holding a Philippine passport. Only 1 week before the news that shook the tennis world became public, the tennis publication, Tennis 365, released an industry analysis discussing emerging stars and commercial potential. One sentence in that article now reads almost like a prediction. It stated that Eala had not yet captured a WTA title and had not even reached the top 20 rankings. Yet there was already a compelling argument that she might be the most attractive option available to sponsors looking for a new athlete to represent their brand. Not the most appealing player among her generation. Not simply the most promising Asian star. The most appealing option, period. Across categories, demographics, and markets. Porsche's commercial department had seen those same reports. Their team quietly reached out to Eala's management through channels described by people close to the negotiations as unusually thoughtful and carefully designed. The approach appeared crafted to avoid every common obstacle that previous sponsorship discussions around her had encountered. They were not trying to compete with Nike's territory in apparel. They were not interfering with Babolat's equipment partnership. They did not attempt to disrupt existing relationships with Globe Telecom, BPI, or local brands in the Philippines. Instead, Porsche positioned themselves in an entirely different commercial universe. Automotive prestige, luxury lifestyle, European heritage, and high-performance engineering. That combination created a space where speed, elegance, and competitive intensity intersected perfectly with the identity of the brand. No other sponsor occupied that territory in Eala's portfolio, and when Porsche finally placed their offer on the table, the number itself captured the attention of the entire industry. The number attached to that proposal immediately stunned the tennis industry. Nearly $200 million arranged across a 10-year partnership. The agreement included global brand ambassador responsibilities, a premium lifestyle product line connected to her image, a fragrance collaboration, and a massive marketing campaign designed specifically for Southeast Asia's fast-growing luxury market. In a single moment, it became the largest athlete investment Porsche had ever made in its corporate history. Previous ambassadors like Emma Raducanu and Angelique Kerber had represented the brand proudly, but none of those partnerships approached this scale. Everything in this deal would revolve around one athlete. When early details of the agreement began circulating within the WTA's leadership circles, the response was immediate and intense. It was not quiet concern or polite disagreement. Many officials reacted with genuine anger. The frustration was not simply about Porsche shifting its attention away from supporting the tour as a whole. The deeper problem was what the decision suggested about the commercial value of the WTA itself. The timing made the situation even more sensitive. Mercedes-Benz had just finalized the most valuable sponsorship agreement in the history of women's professional sport. During the ceremony announcing that partnership, tennis legend Billie Jean King called it a transformational moment for the future of the game. For decades, the WTA had promoted the belief that the tour itself was the central commercial product deserving of investment. Individual players were stars, but the collective system created the platform that generated value. After years of effort, that argument had finally delivered a record-breaking result with the Mercedes deal. Then Porsche effectively challenged that entire philosophy without even speaking publicly about it. By redirecting nearly half a century of loyalty toward one individual athlete, they suggested that the human story inside the sport might actually hold more commercial power than the institution organizing it. For officials who had spent their careers building the tour's collective identity, that implication felt unsettling. Their biggest concern was the precedent it might create. If one major corporate partner decided it was more effective to invest directly in a star rather than the tour structure, what would prevent other sponsors from following the same path? Why purchase exposure across an entire organization when attaching your brand to the right athlete could generate stronger emotional engagement? Beneath those strategic fears was another reality that made the situation even harder to ignore. The narrative Porsche had embraced was not irrational. It was supported by what was happening on the court and beyond it. At the center of the story stood a young athlete from Quezon City, who began the 2025 season ranked around 140 inches the world. Within 12 months, she surged forward, finishing the year inside the top 50, while capturing her first WTA title in Guadalajara. She earned her first Grand Slam main draw victory at the US Open and reached a significant final at Eastbourne. When she looked back on that breakthrough year publicly, she did not frame it as a professional triumph or a commercial milestone. Instead, she described it as a heartfelt tribute to her family, her team, and the younger version of herself who once chose the difficult path of pursuing tennis at the highest level. By early 2026, her progress continued. Her ranking climbed to a career high around 31 after a victory over Jasmine Paolini, one of the world's top players, during a tournament in Dubai. That win marked her fourth victory over top 10 opposition, a pace analysts described as unusually rapid for someone still establishing her position on the tour. Her achievements extended beyond the professional circuit as well. Representing the Philippines at the Southeast Asian Games in Thailand, she captured a gold medal in women's singles and helped contribute to additional podium finishes. Shortly afterward, she played a key role in the Philippines sweeping their Billie Jean King Cup matches, remaining undefeated while helping the national team earn a historic promotion. Away from competition, her cultural presence continued expanding rapidly. She appeared on the covers of prominent Philippine magazines and maintained long-standing partnerships with brands that had supported her since childhood. Globe Telecom had believed in her potential when she was only 8 years old. Her equipment deal with Babolat and apparel partnership with Nike reflected years of steady growth. For her Wimbledon debut, Nike even designed a special accessory inspired by the national flower of the Philippines, a small but meaningful gesture acknowledging her cultural identity. Her connection to grassroots sports programs also came full circle when she returned to the Milo training clinics she once attended as a child, this time serving as their ambassador. The enthusiasm surrounding her success grew so powerful that journalists from outlets like Rappler and Vera Files had to investigate and debunk false sponsorship rumors spreading online. Fans were creating imaginary endorsement deals simply because they believed the real ones did not yet match the scale of her future potential. That kind of organic excitement cannot easily be manufactured by traditional marketing strategies. Observers across the tennis world noticed the same trend. Commentators pointed out how crowds seemed increasingly drawn to her matches, and fellow players acknowledged the growing attention surrounding her presence at tournaments. Porsche's analysts studied those patterns carefully. They examined market growth in Southeast Asia, fan engagement statistics, and the unusual digital momentum forming around her story. Eventually, they arrived at a simple conclusion. They were not investing in a list of accomplishments already written in history books. They were investing in the possibility of what might come next. From their perspective, the gamble was not about whether Eala had already reached the top of the sport. It was about whether she possessed the rare combination of talent, identity, and narrative power capable of capturing global imagination. WTA officials had understandable concerns about the structural consequences of such a move, but Porsche's decision operated on a different level entirely. At its heart, the choice was not about sponsorship frameworks or institutional partnerships. It was about belief in a young athlete who consistently speaks about gratitude, hard work, and belonging among the world's best players. Porsche did not abandon women's tennis. They simply shifted their focus from the structure of the sport to the individual story unfolding inside it. Whether that decision eventually proves visionary or risky will only be revealed with time, but the moment it happened, the entire tennis world realized something important had changed.